on YouTube. Good evening and good morning. My name is Aurélien Orange, and from the Quarks Foundation today we have a match for the Inter-University Law Debate Tournament in the group phase. We are still in the group phase. This is a group where two universities will be debating on a topic connected to trade law and environmental aspect of the action of the companies, let's say. They received the topic a week ago, and a bit more a week ago, but we had to move the match. So today we have this match, finally, the day 3 match between Prince Sultan University and ULICAT, Latin American University of Science and Technology. And I see that there is one of the judges who is joining as well. So welcome to as well one of the judges. So yes, we are very happy to host this match, and we'll hear as well the argumentation. Before we move to the match, I would like to give the floor to the students to introduce themselves. So I will ask first Maria Carolina Gonzalez Blanco to introduce herself. Welcome.
Well, hi. Good evening, good night. My name is Carolina Gonzalez Blanco, and I'm a second-year student of International Relations.
Thank you, and welcome. We have as well in Prince Sultan University, Dana Al-Saif. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Dana Al-Saif. I'm a senior law student here in PSU.
Thank you, and welcome. We have as well in San Jose, Mr. Gabriel David Jimenez Benavides.
Hi, my name is Gabriel Jimenez. I'm a first student of International Relations here at the Latin American University of Science and Technology. I'm excited to be here today. Finally, Assalamu alaikum to our counterparts of Prince Sultan University. We're very honored to debate today with you.
Thank you, and welcome. We have as well in Prince Sultan University Miss Gena Kurdi.
Yes, hi everybody, my name is Ghana Kurdi. I'm a first year law student in Prince Sultan University, and I'm honored to be debating with you guys today.
Thank you, and welcome. And we have as well in San Jose, Miss Mabel Melissa Fernandez Ramos.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Mabel. I'm a second year student of International Relations and honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have as well Mr. Khaled Abdou. Welcome.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I am Khaled Abdou. This is my first year in software engineering and PSU. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and welcome. We send greetings as well to the coach. So several coaches who are maybe watching the match or will be re-watching the match. So we send greetings on the side of Prince Sultan University to Miss Judy Saab, who is a former participant, and with as well Mr. Hashim Ashram, former participant as well, and Professor Sophia Adan, who was coach as well last year. So that is for the team for PSU. And concerning ULICAT, so we send greetings as well to Professors David Garnier Mendes and as well to the Dean José Armando Madrigal Segura. So for this match, we received the topic. The topic was companies violating environmental standards should face automatic trade sanctions. Before we move to the allocation of positions, I don't know if one of the judges, with Mr. Luis Aninat, can you hear us at this moment, Mr. Aninat?
Yes.
Yes. So
hello, everyone.
Hello. So Professor Aninat is in Chile, and he will be assessing the match. He's one of the 3 judges, and we thank you as well for your time for watching this match, and as well for providing maybe some little feedback at the end of the match based on what you will be hearing during this debate. So now, many thanks. So now I will share my screen for the allocation of positions with the randomizer. So normally you should see a wheel with the double flags and logos of your respective institutions. As you can see, there are 2 chances. One chance to be in favor, one chance to be against the motion. The team will be in favor, will be starting the match with the first introduction. So for this match, ULICAT, Latin American University of Science and Technology, will be against the motion. So it means as a consequence, Prince Sultan University will be in favor and will be starting with the first introduction. Concretely, it means that Prince Sultan University will defend the position that companies violating environmental standards should face automatic trade sanctions, while ULICAT, the Latin American University of Science and Technology, will defend the position that companies violating environmental standards should not face automatic trade sanctions. So now you will have 5 minutes to review your notes, and then we'll start the introduction by Prince Sultan University. So we are done with the 5 minutes of preparation. So I stop sharing my screen. So for this match, I will be the timekeeper. So it means that when you will see, sorry, I have to activate my camera as well, so it does not work.
Oh, it's okay. Just a background for the camera, as my colleague who was still connecting it. I'm also ready to be the timekeeper. So if you need a visual cue for the yellow card, will indicate 30 seconds left of your speaking time. And when you see red, of course, it indicates your speaking time is up and it's not recommended to make a start of any new sentences. So for your debate today on the topic of companies violating environmental standards should face automatic trade sanctions, Prince Sultan University, you have 4 minutes for your opening statement.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes.
Okay. Honorable judges, esteemed opponents, and distinguished audience, climate change is no longer a distant threat. It is a crisis unfolding before our eyes. Despite international agreements and mounting scientific evidence, companies continue to violate environmental standards in pursuit of profit. If we are serious about protecting our planet, we need a stronger, more enforceable system. That is why we firmly support the motion that companies violating environmental standards should face automatic trade sanctions. First off, environmental protection is a legal obligation under customary international law, and violations must be enforced. In addition to that, environmental harm violates intergenerational equity, burdening future generations with today's destruction. And finally, environmental sustainability is a universal duty, and no company should be exempt. To start off, environmental standards are not mere suggestions. They are a recognized part of customary international law. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change establishes that states, and by extension, the corporations working within them, are legally obligated to protect the environment. And yet, when companies deforest the Amazon and dump toxic waste into rivers, they rarely face consequences beyond modest fines. This is where automatic trade sanctions become essential. They ensure that violators face real economic consequences. We already see successful examples, such as the Montreal Protocol, which imposed trade restrictions on ozone depleting substances, resulting in one of the most successful environmental recovery efforts in history. If we can enforce trade bans on harmful substances, why not on corporations that violate environmental laws? Second of all, corporate environmental violations are an intergenerational injustice. The actions of today's corporations dictate the quality of life for future generations. The Paris Agreement itself reinforces that climate policies must consider long-term impacts. But corporations do not think long-term. They prioritize short-term efforts, leaving future generations to deal with rising sea levels, poisoned air, and vanishing biodiversity. In Miters Opoza versus Factor in the Philippines, the Supreme Court ruled that deforestation violated the rights of future generations. If courts acknowledge that environmental harm is a violation of intergenerational rights, then it is only logical that we impose real consequences on the companies responsible. By doing this, we force corporations to consider long-term impacts, ensuring they cannot profit today while leaving the consequences for tomorrow. And finally, environmental sustainability is a universal obligation, and no company should be exempt for violating it. The polluter pays principle establishes that those who cause environmental damage must bear the cost of their actions. Yet many corporations treat fines as just another business expense. Trade sanctions provide an enforcement mechanism that actually works. Consider JBS, Brazil's largest meat producer, which was fined repeatedly for sourcing cattle from deforested land. Yet the company only stopped doing so when the EU placed trade sanctions. The lesson is clear. Fines do not work. Trade sanctions do. The time for leniency is over. Climate change is not waiting for corporations to self-regulate. The laws exist, but without real enforcement, they are meaningless. This is about accountability. This is about justice for future generations, and this is about ensuring that corporations can no longer profit from the destruction of our planet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission. We'll now hear the opening statement for the against position by Latin American University of Sciences and Technology. You two have 4 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, honorable judges, and respected opponents, we recognize the importance of holding companies accountable for environmental harm. We are in agreement with the opposing team about the relevance of climate change issues. We believe that implementing automatic sanctions, though, would be an unjust and ineffective approach that undermines the key principles of international law, disrupts global trade, and hampers opportunities for constructive solutions. That is why we stand firmly against the motion companies violated environmental standards should face automatic trade sanctions. First and foremost, we must address a crucial legal principle because we are talking about a legal matter, due process. Under the Article 11 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, everyone is entitled to a fair trial, due process before facing a punishment. This includes companies, which should not be subject to automatic penalties without the opportunity of going through a thorough review of their actions. The WTO agreements in Chapter 11 emphasize non-discriminatory and national treatment, which prevent arbitrary unilateral actions such as the automatic sanctions proposed, without a case-by-case assessment. In other words, the imposition of automatic trade sanctions would bypass legal frameworks that ensure justice and fairness for all parties involved. Companies should be given a right to defend and seek remedies, instead of being pushed and punished based on arbitrary, premature decisions. There are far more effective and constructive ways to deal with environmental violations than imposing automatic trade sanctions. Mediation, conciliation, arbitration can provide opportunities for dialogue between companies, governments, and civil society, giving companies the chance to correct their actions without disrupting their entire operations. When companies violate environmental standards, they often work with NGOs and governments to improve their practices, resulting in long-term benefits for both the company and the communities they impact. Cooperation is far more effective than punishment. We also must ask ourselves, what country is really going to agree to such automatic trade sanctions? The reality is that many countries, especially those that work with weaker environmental regulations or industries that depend environmentally on harmful practices, will most likely resist these sanctions. Emerging economies often face difficult choices facing between economic growth and environmental protection. For them, imposing these kind of sanctions would be a punctative measure that would still development. Southeast Asian countries rely heavily on industries such as textile and mining. For these nations, the infringement of sovereignty will be a challenge accepting these automatic trade sanctions. Moreover, the outsourcing issue must be considered. Companies could easily relocate to countries with laxer environmental regulations, thereby bypassing the sanctions altogether. This is a case that actually happens today. Many countries have their manufacturing operations in countries that have lesser environmental standards, and so they don't even have to face the regular trade sanctions that we apply. For instance, multinational corporations have already moved significant parts of their operation to countries, as I mentioned, in Southeast Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. The risk of fragmentation in global trade is also impunitive. In addition to these practical challenges, we must consider that the trade agreements are based on cooperation and shared standards. We cannot allow automatic trade sanctions that will further deepen inequality and divide nations between those that will agree and can afford the environmental reforms. We urge you to reject this motion in favor of measured, thoughtful solutions that prioritize justice, global cooperation, and sustainable progress, especially a solution that can be respected within legal frameworks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This concludes the opening statements. We'll now hear the first rebuttal in favor. From Sultan University debate team, you have 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
You are.
The opposition argued that automatic trade sanctions wouldn't work because it's arbitrary. It wouldn't apply. it would be on arbitrary rules. However, automatic doesn't necessarily mean arbitrary, but the financial penalties for tax violations follow clear and legal frameworks, right? Environmental trade sanctions can be implemented within clear structure and appeal mechanisms. Another argument is that it would actually fail to make a change, right? According to a report from European Environment Information Observation Network, is that in the past decade, substantial changes in environmental regulations have led countries to significantly improve the environmental performance of industrial activity. They also argued that outsourcing would become a problem with automatic trade sanctions. However, with automatic trade sanctions, it would be applied universally and throughout all countries. Therefore, the outsourcing wouldn't even apply in this situation. It would apply everywhere equally. And also, they said that arbitration wouldn't stop them from continuing to actually violate these environmental standards, and that mediation, fines, and other measures would work. However, how long have we actually utilized these measures? And how long has this gone on without it actually working, without the sanctions working?
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission. We'll now hear the first rebuttal for the against position. My apologies. Latin American University of Sciences and Technology, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Peter. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. Let me respond to the core points made by the counterparts and highlight why their reasoning is flawed and incomplete. Yeah, there are international treaties, for example, as they mentioned in the beginning, like the non-fail practice, but none of them mandate automatic sanctions. The WTO's Articles 1 and 3 prohibit discrimination and requires fair treatment. Also, the Vienna Convention on Treaties requires good faith. The counterparts are proposing a rigid unilateral mechanism that bypasses legal safeguards. That's not enforcement, it's overreach. Also, let's not pretend that trade sanctions will magically stop exploitation. In fact, sanctions may harm those very same countries. They often lack green infrastructures. Those with developing economies lack of that green infrastructures, and not of malice, but due to underdevelopment. Sanctioning their industries punishes them for problems they didn't create, support cooperation, not coercion, lead to lasting environmental progress. Also, I would like to add that, for example, most of free trade agreements, the FTAs, and I would like to add an example, the CAFTA, the United States FTA with Central America and the Dominican Republic, include legally binding environmental clauses, but also specify that disputes must be resolved through dialogue, consultation, or arbitration. Automatic sanctions ignore those mechanisms. So to close, our counterparts offer urgency, but not wisdom. Their solution bypasses established legal frameworks, risks trade retaliation, and fails to address root causes. Sustainability requires precision and cooperation, not blunt forced punishment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Passing the floor to the defending the in favor position for Sultan University. You too have 2 minutes.
The opposition claim that the WTO rules against discrimination or has rules against discrimination. Therefore, sanctions against environmental harm wouldn't work. However, WTO allows environmental measures under exceptions like Article 20's general exceptions, more specifically, Paragraph B, which permits trade restrictions necessary to protect human, animal, plant life, or to conserve natural resources. In fact, in previous cases where the WTO did rule against trade bans under discriminatory rules, they furthermore it was due to discriminatory application, not environmental objective in and of itself, right? Because it was unilateral, because it was inconsistent, because it was discriminatory against specific countries. An example of this is the U.S. shrimp case of 1998, where the WTO did initially rule against the U.S. bans on shrimp import caught without turtle safe net, but later upheld the policy once the U.S. applied it fairly across all nations. This demonstrates that trade restrictions aimed at environmental protection can be WTO compliant if properly structured. With the proposition, we argue that it would be automatic sanctions against all, fairly, for all countries, for all peoples, not specifically. Therefore, the argument that it would be discriminatory does not apply here. The environmental sanctions have also been seen to be effective before. Take, for example, or even more specifically, trade-based environmental
Microphone.
Your microphone was muted. Your timer was stopped. You have 20 seconds left. Please restart your last 2 sentences at least.
We have a success in trade-based environmental enforcement before, like the Basel Convention of 1989, which bans trade in hazardous waste, preventing corporations from dunking toxic materials in weaker economies. This is not radical policies. They are proven tools for holding corporations accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. For the second rebuttal, India against position, Latin American University of Sciences and Technology, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, am I visible and audible?
You are visible, but there is an echo. Please try again.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, no echo.
Okay.
You can start.
Perfect. So I will start in 3, 2, 1. The opponents argued that automatic trade sanctions are necessary to hold corporations accountable. But at what cost? At the cost of due process? At the cost of fundamental legal principles? Justice is not about speed, it is about fairness. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 11, establishes the presumption of innocence. A trial is needed. The World Trade Organization legal framework, Article 11, prohibits arbitrary trade restrictions. Yet automatic trade sanctions ignore these principles, imposing penalties before a company has even the chance to defend itself. Take, for example, the case of Chevron in Ecuador. The company was found guilty by an Ecuadorian court and faced a $9.5 billion fine. But later, international courts ruled that the judgment was based on fraud. If automatic sanctions had been in place, Chevron would have been punished unfairly. Before the truth came to light, is that the kind of justice that we're fighting for? Environmental violations must be punished, but through legal mechanisms, not automatic indiscriminate sanctions. We already have international frameworks, the Paris Agreement, the Basel Convention, the WTO dispute resolution. These allow for legal accountability without violating fundamental rights. The opponent's argument is based on urgency, but urgency does not justify injustice and the lack of respect in rights. If we allow punishment without legal review, we do not create a system of accountability. We create a system of arbitrary economic retaliation. True environmental justice is not about rushing to punish, but about ensuring corporations are held accountable through lawful, fair, and enforceable mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you. This marks the end of the rebuttals. We'll now hear the concluding statements, starting with the Prince Sultan University, defending the in favor position. You have 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
You are.
Okay. The opposition says that automatic trade sanctions are too harsh, but what's truly harsh is letting corporations destroy our planet without consequences. For years, they have polluted, deforested, and exploited resources, treating small fines as just another business cost. If we don't force or enforce real penalties, nothing will change. Trade sanctions are not extreme, they are necessary. First, as we talked, protecting the environment is a legal duty, not a choice. Agreement like UNFCCC requires companies to follow environmental standards, yet many companies complete to violate them. GPS in Brazil ignored fines for illegal deforestation, but when it comes to EU, they imposed trade sanctions. They finally changed. Economic pressures work when voluntary complaints fail. Second, when we talk about corporate pollution, it's injustice for future generation. The Paris Agreement says that we must protect the environment for those who came after us, but companies only focus on short-term profits. Courts already recognize that. So, as we have seen in Miners Opposa versus Vactoran, if the law defends future generations, trade policies should too. Finally, polluters must pay for the damage that they do or that they cause. We punish companies for tax fraud and trade violations. Why should harming the environment be any different? Without enforcement, corporations will continue putting profit over the planet. Okay, finally, the truth is you cannot expect a tree to grow. At the same time, you are cutting its roots. If we allow companies to destroy without consequences, we are not just risking ecosystems, we are risking the future, we are betraying our children and the next generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission. We'll now hear the concluding statements in the against position by Latin American University of Sciences and Technology. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I would like to say we agree on the most important issue that we are discussing here, which is the urgency of climate change. We are not here to defend greedy corporations who bypass legal frameworks by already being unsanctioned by the regular trade sanctions that we implement today. Nevertheless, these specific automatic trade sanctions, it's not that they are too harsh, it's that they are ineffective and they are legally bypassing the established mechanisms of the due process, the right to trial, and the right to defense. We are in a law debate tournament. We are discussing a legal issue. How are we going to propose a solution to a worldwide global issue that directly infringes legal principles? It is irrational to consider that automatic trade sanctions would solve the climate crisis or that will bring corporate responsibility to its due payment. We cannot rely on automatic, but unilateral and arbitrary measures. We must enforce cooperation, open dialogue, mediation, and the alternative dispute resolution mechanisms that are already in place. There is no need to add another way to sanction these companies when there are already mechanisms in place. We should redirect our funds and our energy in reinforcing the already existing mechanisms so that these companies can be held accountable. Because as I mentioned, we do agree in the fact that climate change is a crisis that we must attend now. The time to act is now, but urgency cannot dictate our decisions, and automatic trade sanctions will most definitely not be the most practical or effective solution for this crisis that we all face at a global level. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission. You can all now relax. You are no longer graded after this part. This concludes your Day 3 debate in the Hague Inter-University Law Debate Tournament 2025. Congratulations and good job on passing your debates, on researching and presenting your arguments. Usually after the debate is over, we have a short round in regards to the feedback. If there is a judge present with us on the call, this round is started by the students, and then this gives the time to the present judge, should they wish to share already some generalized feedback to the teams as in a reaction to the debate that they just heard. If not, of course, it's completely all right. And on that note, I would first like to ask the Prince Sultan University team, starting with Ms. Kurti. How was the debate for you, and perhaps how was it in comparison to the previous matches? Did you know the topic, and was it easier for research?
I thought the debate went really well. The other team all had some really good points. It was definitely a challenge. The topic, to be honest, was very new. I hadn't really researched international trade law or sanctions like that before, but it was interesting to read about. There was definitely less precedent on it than the previous topics, but it's always good to learn something new.
Thank you. Mr. Benavides, how was it for you and for your team from Latin American University of Science and Technology? How was the debate and the research?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, I think we also think it was pretty good. We tried to prepare the best we could. We personally, in our case, we found like in the beginning, like motion a little bit with like ambiguity. However, we try to adapt to that motion and find all possibilities. And yeah, we try to give all our best in this case, because again, we found like this motion had like a little bit of ambiguity, but yeah, I think everything was fine.
Thank you very much. Mr. Abdu, how was it for you, the debate topic?
It was actually a great experience to be here. And as Ms. Kurdi said, it was something new for us to discover, to talk about companies and something like that. But we also found some similar things, like when we talked about the Paris Agreement, something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fernandez, how was it for you?
Yeah, thank you. Well, actually, we found that in comparison to the previous debates, there was a lot more information to research on in this case. The previous motions were a little bit more limited in terms of resources when it came to the research. But for us, we conducted a previous investigation before we received the motion on the topic of green economy to like familiarize ourselves with the matter, and then we went deeper into the specifics of corporate social responsibility, and it was very interesting to learn about these things and how they act in the real world. So yeah, very fun.
Great, thank you for sharing. This gives us also a good insight as organizing team. Ms. Al-Saif, how was the debate, the research for you?
It was an honor to debate with you guys, and the topic was somewhat familiar, somewhat not. Like Khalid said, our previous motions were about environmental law and companies and countries having to follow. So a bit of some things are familiar, but more specifically, the corporate side was not. So that was pretty new and interesting to look into.
Thank you for sharing. Of course, Ms. Gonzalez Blanco, how was it for you?
Thank you. I think it was definitely really interesting, and I'm really proud that we did a real extensive research. We investigated a lot of cases and all over the world, including Costa Rica, and I think it was really interesting listening about all of these experiences with corporations and environmental standards. And I think it also brought us a lot of conversations and discussions between us three about the legality and on all of the information regarding these areas. So I think it was really productive, and we learned a lot from this investigation.
Thank you for sharing with us this information. It gives us really a good insight, and well done really to your teams on adjusting and progressing towards the debate. I want to ask maybe if Mr. Adinat, who's one of the 3-member jury panel, if there is any feedback that you might be already able to share with the teams with us on the call today. If not, it's completely okay. There's plenty of time to finalize the forms.
Yeah, hello everyone. First, I apologize for not turning on my camera. I'm a little busy right now. I want to congratulate both teams. I think both teams made very good, very clear arguments, and it is in this matter specifically. I think that there's an added degree of difficulty, right? Since this is not this seems to be like a clear-cut issue when especially when you're dealing with law students, right? You have international law, you have these agreements, and it would seem to be that this is kind of like a very clear-cut case for one of the positions. And I was actually very persuaded by one of the teams that, that there's an argument to be made here regarding other principles that may apply, like fairness and equity, and especially the argument on intergenerational responsibility is kind of a really relevant one, I would say, especially when you're dealing with arguments such as urgency, and this kind of like this need that we have to regulate this issue because it will affect future generations. I would say that in general terms, all of your contributions were very well done. I don't see that there is something here that would maybe strike me as not a very good argument, and you were able to counteract the arguments from the opposing party quite well. Of course, I'll grade you individually in the grade sheets, but I want to congratulate you all, because it was a very, very interesting discussion. I was very moved by your positions, and I think that all of you have like a really bright future in terms of how you're learning rhetoric and how to argue your legal positions. So congratulations, and I wish you the best for whatever team moves forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Aninat, for taking the time out of your day, joining us on the call, and also for sharing this with the students. On the side of organizing team, of course, it's been an honor seeing your progress from the first debate until your last. Of course, the group phase is reviewed individually, so it is the aggregation of points you get during this group phase that determines which teams continue to the next stage. But it's been such a journey with all the teams. Before we conclude, and also with some information in regards to mid-edition networking event, during which also the 16 teams in the second stage of competition will be announced, allow me just a bit more questions to maybe get that networking started already today. During the competition, during studies, you've encountered different areas of law. Is there perhaps already a favorite one, or the one that interests you to further pursue studies or professionally? Maybe starting with Ms. Fernandez from Latin American University of Science and Technology.
Well, out of the ones that we have studied, I think this last one in terms of corporate law is what really calls my attention. I think that, well, we live in a world that is pretty much driven by corporations, and they need their lawyers. So it's definitely very interesting to get into that field. For me, it definitely kind of like sparks a light of curiosity on how these companies play the legal field. So yeah, that's for me the most interesting part.
Thank you for sharing. Ms. Al Saif from Sultan University, how is it for you?
For me, a portion of law that I'm really interested in is international law. It's actually what I'm studying now in university in my final semester for the most part. And it's something I'm really interested in the future, and something I really want to work in for most of my life.
Thank you for sharing. It's quite a start. Also with having experience now on the international stage through the competition. Mr. Benavides, how is it for you?
Yeah, I think so far the most interesting topic we have discussed was space law. I think it was very interesting something to learn about.
As I was saying, space law has been like the most interesting one so far. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to work in the future in that. However, again, like so far, it's been the most interesting one. And in my personal opinion, I like more like international public law. Who knows? Maybe in the future, a master's degree. I don't know. I think we'll still have time to think about it. But yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And also, might I say, very quick troubleshooting on your team side. Good call. Miss Kitty, how is it for you in regards to your interest in law?
I think, like Mr. Gabriel said, the most interesting thing that I've researched into so far has been everything regarding space law. It was really interesting to look up all these treaties that people had signed, that countries had signed regarding space, but also the international public law side of things was very interesting to me. I'm only just starting in my law degree, so it was interesting to look into international treaties, international conventions, what's legally binding, what's not legally binding, and everything like that.
Nice, thank you for sharing. Miss Carolina Gonzalez Blanco, how is it for you? Which area of law is perhaps the one that has taken your interest most?
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the most interesting insights for me would be environmental law. I really like it, and I think I'm really influenced by living in a country that is really worried about environmentability, searching for renewable energies and everything, being a leader in Latin America regarding renewable sources. So I think it was really interesting for me, and I've researched about it in my classes. So I think it's one of the sites that I like the most.
Great. Thank you for sharing it. Mr. Abdu, did you already hear perhaps an area of law that you might be meeting your future colleagues from this match later in future, or is it a different one?
Well, to be honest with you, it's different because I already study something different, which is software engineering. So it's something new for me. It's a new experience. But the thing is that there is no problem with learning some treaties, some cases, and also have experience in different fields. But as I said before, that I study software engineering, so I don't think I'm gonna be something near to the law track or even what they said. Yeah.
You might encounter quite a few IP laws in your future careers with software, copyright safeguarding, or maybe patent, depending on your jurisdictions. So you might not want to put law just on the hook yet. All right. Well, there's also another way that you can stay in contact, and that is also possible travel options, of course. During the final week, we are happy to host everyone that is able to travel to The Hague for the international court visits as well, with collaboration with our partner organizations, and of course, the actual final debates for the finals and semifinals. But perhaps if you were able to travel to the city of your opposing team today, what would be the cultural event that you might be able to experience? So for the Prince Sultan University, to all three of you, a question: should the ULICAT students be able to travel and come to Riyadh? What is the cultural event or student event that you would introduce them to or take them to experience?
A cultural event that I would take them to experience. We have something called Boulevard World. It's basically this big area that has corners from every single country. So we could take them to see like the corner that was inspired by their country, but we could also take them to see the corner that was inspired by Saudi Arabia's culture. And there's just a lot of different foods, clothes, stores from all different cultures around the world. So I think that would be something very interesting for them to see.
Maybe also your colleagues, if there's anything you would like to add.
I would probably take them either to Dir'iyah or any other like historical spot just to see like the history of Saudi Arabia and our past, you know.
It'll be an exciting visit. What about ULICAT team? Should the Prince Sultan University team be able to come and visit San Jose? What are the cultural events or perhaps student-related life events that you would introduce them to experience?
I would definitely encourage them that if they come here, we have a beautiful country. And in San Jose, we have the National Theater, which is really beautiful. I love going there and hearing concerts. It has some amazing paintings, and some of them depicting about Costa Rica's history. So it's really nice. And also in San Carlos, there's a beautiful volcano, which is the Arenal volcano. It's really beautiful, and there's a lot of biodiversity near the volcano and everything. So it's a really amazing experience.
Great, thank you. And also, of course, your colleagues, if there's anything you'd like to add.
I would say, sorry, we're all together, so the echo is, yep. To me, the most beautiful thing that our country has is the coast. So if you guys like the beach, I would definitely recommend going to some festival or some kind of thing that is held at Santa Teresa or Puerto Viejo or whatever it might be. It's very chill. It's a very chill vibe, but it definitely is beautiful, and the views are absolutely worth it.
Right, well, thank you for sharing. It looks like there is quite an opportunity to experience, especially if you haven't been able to visit the other team's country just yet. You might now already have a good contact to whom to reach out if you are able to travel. And on that note, I'll be passing the floor to Professor Levant to close out this session. Again, it's been a pleasure, and see you during the Mid-Edition networking event.
Yes, so it was a pleasure as well for me to watch this match, because we see all the match as organizers, and we see the progression of the teams from the first match. First match is when, of course, you get used to the format of the competition, format of the debate, and as well, simply you organize your strategy and your argumentation. And the third match is when you have already, went through several oppositions, and you have already a system to research, to manage your time as well. So I can see that indeed there is a lot of improvements from weeks ago. We started 5 weeks ago, actually. So it's already, I would say, a pleasure to see that indeed the two teams and the other teams as well have reached already this level of debate. And when it will be time, of course, to go to the 8th of finals, yes, you will have, of course, the same system 1 week in advance, but that will be against new teams that you did not have any, I would say, contact with yet. But socially, the social experience of this competition is as well very important for us. We consider that it's an opportunity as well for networking, for example, now. You can as well look for each other on LinkedIn if you wish to keep contact. You never know in the future if you need a software engineer in Saudi Arabia, a lawyer in Costa Rica, or, of course, the other capacity and skills as well among all the participants. And at the midterm event as well, you will meet many more other students around the world who have been experiencing it like you, those match, and they will be happy to connect with you and to exchange with you about this experience. So yes, do not hesitate. It's only one time that is possible to participate to this competition as a debater. As a coach, it can be possible several times, but for the networking, it is indeed a group where you can make many connections for as well your career and for your rest of studies, of course. So on my side and on the side of the Corax Foundation, we thank you very much for this first part of the competition. And of course, we'll be finalizing all these grading rubrics we'll be receiving, and we'll share with you, of course, the results. And one thing again we want to tell you, indeed, there are still 2 matches happening next week for teams who had to postpone some match. So yes, officially the group phase will be finished next week on Thursday. So many thanks again. We keep in touch and wish you the best in Riyadh and in San Jose. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.